record, and we're going live. Hold on one second. I got to pull up the graphics, sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Let's get your graphic up, and then I'm going to get the coffee. Good evening, everyone. This is Adam Frick with Folsom TV. I'm here with Chad Veen, and we're here with another episode of Coffee and Conversation with a candidate for City Council. Of course, this isn't really coffee. Maybe it's cocktails and conversation with a candidate for City Council. But anyways, we're here at Red Bus Brewery, and we're just talking about Folsom and politics. But I want to introduce you to the man. If you haven't got to know Chad, I'm going to talk a little bit about his history and when you moved to Folsom and all that. He gave me some stuff to talk about. So you moved to Folsom in 2002?
I did. Actually moved to Sacramento right after 9/11, so right about this time of year, 17 years ago. Ended up living in Midtown for a while, and that was actually a result of the relationship I was in with a girlfriend who is now my wife.
Yep.
But in 2002, I moved to Folsom in a little rental house, actually right there behind El Dorado Savings Bank.
Okay.
By the now middle school, and I lived there for a little while with a buddy I was working with, and my wife and I, well, girlfriend at the time, we were visiting my grandmother, and in her sort of irascible way said, "Why don't you just buy a house?"
Yeah.
We're like, well, we hadn't really thought about it, so we looked and looked around at the time. We found something we could afford over there behind St. John's Church, and we were going to live there for a couple of years, and then the market went where it went, and we ended up living there for 10 years, and now we live up by Carl Sundal.
Oh, okay. Oh, very nice. And so you married your wife, Allison.
Yeah.
14 years, and you got two boys.
Yes.
Owen, 10 years old, and Calvin, 7.
Yes.
What's it like? I've got two boys too. What are boys like? What are your
They
boys like?
it's a lot of fun, especially at this age, because you can really start doing a lot of stuff with them. I've been coaching youth sports ever since Owen could play, so I've always had that opportunity with him. And now that Calvin's coming up, I've been coaching his soccer team for the last few years. But they're both extremely active. Owen, everyone says, looks exactly like me. I really can't argue. It's kind of freaky how much he looks like me. Kind of like a mini-me.
It's amazing how those genes things work.
Yeah, it really shows through in this case. My poor wife, she never gets the, hey, that one looks like you.
Right.
The one time she does a year, she just loves it.
Right.
So it's, but yeah, they're great kids. Owen is in his second year on the Folsom Junior Bulldogs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a decision. It took us a few years to make, but we are glad he's in it. It's a phenomenal program. His coaches are amazing, and it's a great feeder program for the high school.
Yes.
So it's a ton of fun to go to those games, see those kids do just, when kids played football when I was a little kid that age, it was nothing like it is today. It's serious.
No, it's amazing. I mean, you walk onto the field, because my kids both did football as well. But, you do soccer and you do some of these other sports, baseball and whatnot. But when you walk onto the football field, especially for the Junior Bulldog program, I mean, you have referees, you've got, serious people that are serious. So, I mean, it's a serious program if you get involved.
And it's credit to all the people who volunteer for that program, because they put on a day-long extravaganza every other week. So, and for Calvin, he's in FSC, Folsom Soccer Club, on the Goal Busters, which is the name of the team that I was on when I was his age. Carried that over. So we're coaching that this year. This is his third year playing, so that's a ton of fun as well. I love seeing those kids. Soccer's a great sport to kind of feel out how a kid is athletics-wise.
Yes.
It's great to be able to, you don't have a lot of time to mold them necessarily in a soccer season, but at least influence them. And I always say if they end the year still liking the game and wanting to keep playing, then we did our job right.
Yes, very true, very true. Very cool. Okay, and then you also got two pets. You got a rescue dog named Lucy, who's 13, and And Pete the cat.
Pete the cat, before there was a thing called Pete the cat. Pete the cat we got, oh gosh, 12 years ago now.
Yeah.
And then, well, you know, cats, he's been hanging around since then.
Right.
Not doing a whole lot.
And your dog and cat get along together?
No.
No, they don't.
So we got Lucy, the house in between the two I mentioned. We lived briefly in American River Canyon South.
Yeah.
And our neighbor had to move to Colorado to take a job. He could not take his dog with him. And he asked if we would adopt her, more or less. She was a rescue, pretty badly abused, but he had really rehabilitated her. And our boys just fell in love with Lucy. And when he took that job, he asked if we'd be willing to house her, and we said yeah. So she's been with us for a little over 2 years now. She's definitely getting up there.
Yeah.
Getting a little more challenging to care for, but she's still a big part of our family too.
Very nice. All right, we're going to move on to your education. So you graduated the University of Redlands in 2001 with a degree in government.
I did, and that's Redlands, not Reading. Everybody thinks when I say that, oh, up north.
Reading,
No,
right?
no.
Yeah.
Little town outside LA, about 70 miles right off the 10.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Southern California.
Obviously, because you said the 10.
Yep,
Yeah.
You got that. So it's like, actually, I don't say the for Northern California freeways,
Right.
which is weird. But
Right.
so University of Redlands, I was not a political science degree. Actually, the workings of government, how it works at local, state, federal levels, how the presidency works, how the electoral college works, just studying basically how America goes, how it operates.
Right.
Love that. Really fortunate to be in that. I had a lot of amazing classmates. Actually, one of them is that graduated with me. He's a congressman for California District 31 down in Southern California, Pete Aguilar.
Okay.
We still stay in touch. He's got a lot of interesting things to say these days.
Yeah.
I ended up taking a job at a magazine up here in Folsom called Government Technology.
Oh.
So two things people tend to not be interested in.
Right.
Merge them into one.
Put them into one.
Yeah.
Right.
But I did that for 10 years. I wasn't a journalism person in school. I'd always had a bit of a knack for writing.
Yeah.
But I had gotten started writing around here for, it was then called Folsom Style, but Style magazine.
Sure.
I don't know if you remember when the Sacramento Union tried to make a resurgence back in the mid-aughts. So that was the original paper in Sacramento before the Bee. We tried to bring it back. It didn't work. That was a bad time to bring print journalism back.
True. Very true.
So I got this job having the degree and doing some freelance work, doing a staff writer for Government Technology. And what we really did was look at cities, counties, and states all over the country, obviously with an eye towards technology.
Sure.
And see who's doing what successfully to make government more efficient, more cost-effective, just ultimately serve the people better, and also who did things, implemented projects that failed, and what were the reasons for the failures, and what are the lessons we can learn.
Right.
So that was a really cool opportunity. I got to start as a staff writer. I worked my way up to associate editor, so basically overseeing the magazine from conception to production, a small newsroom of writers. And I got to travel the country. I got to meet governors, congressmen, department heads, CIOs, chief information officers. And it was really valuable to me as a person who's interested in government to talk firsthand to these folks who were, when you get them one-on-one, they're pretty candid because they want to be successful too. They really do. They want to serve most of them are unelected, but they want to serve the people they're serving and do a good job. And it was eye-opening. I did that for 10 years. Met a lot of fascinating people, and I think it really, for me, it was fortunate because it allowed me to take what I studied in school and turn that into a career. Now I ended up moving away from there. It was a small company, and kind of hit the ceiling on where I could go career-wise there. And a couple years ago, actually 3 years ago now, I took a job at a company called Purchase Green, which started 10 years ago. It's a small shop in Laverne, California, which is down by Pasadena.
Okay.
And it's an artificial grass manufacturer. When I came on board, we had about 8 or 9 stores. I came on as their corporate marketing and communications person. Still am, one-man show more or less. Still a small company, but we've grown it to 20 stores now in 5 states. So it's a crazy fast-growing market.
Sure.
And it kind of, believe it or not, it actually ties into what I was doing before, because we did talk a lot about sustainability and in particular in California, water resources. So I ended up actually covering a lot of what cities were doing for like
conserving water,
low usage yards, and artificial grass came up a lot. And when that completely random opportunity came up, I got in on it, and it's been great. Small family-owned company, a couple of brothers and their buddy, and we still have less than 70 employees today.
Well,
yeah,
good stuff. So you touched on it a little bit. So you volunteer with the Folsom National Little League. You have served on the board of directors for 2 years.
Right.
Been a soccer and baseball coach every year since 2012.
Yes,
yeah.
And I thought I might be able to sit this fall out.
Yeah.
And it did not work that way.
Oh, no. let me tell you how sports works here. Once you volunteer for sports and you coach, you are always a coach.
No, in fact, I thought the same thing 2 years ago when I was going to, in spring for baseball, when I wasn't going to coach. I was just going to take a year and watch.
Yeah.
And I went to they call it family night, where you meet your teams and whatnot. And I went expecting to watch baseball, and I left coaching and being on the board of directors.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Boy, they saw you coming a mile away. They're like, hey, we got a new one. Zick, zing. Oh, that's great. Well, you know what? We obviously, as a parent, I appreciate all the coaches that my kids have had growing up. So I appreciate the work that you have put in for the other kids. Because I mean, not only is it cool to have. Are you coaching your own kid?
Yeah.
You are.
Calvin.
Okay. All right.
My youngest Calvin is on this team, and it is a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Even though it's a lot of work, but I will say, and I try to use this perspective, because going back to the Folsom Junior Bulldogs program, the amount of time those volunteer coaches put in is unreal.
Yeah.
We have a couple soccer practices a week and an hour on Saturday.
Right.
It's not that tough, and it's a real pleasure to watch the kids learn to love the sport.
Right. You also served the city of Folsom on the now defunct Architectural Review Commission.
That's right. That was a few years back when it existed. It's now, those responsibilities have been folded into the planning department. But basically what we did was kind of preempt everything that came to the planning department that had some sort of architectural component that needed to be considered, which was obviously most things, whether it was a new Best Buy going in at the time, or somebody wanted to do outdoor wainscoting on their house or something like that.
Right.
So everything from big corporate things to residential things, we would just, we had a group of people who may or may not have had any expertise in architecture.
Yep.
And we formed our opinions and sent that off to the planning commission give them a recommendation.
All right.
So it was great to serve. It was a cool thing. I kind of wish we had more of those little commissions that took some of the heavy lifting off of the planning commission and the city council.
Yeah.
So they could make better, more informed decisions, or
right. Have a committee. Yeah, I see how you can break that up, because the planning commission that's a big job.
That is a big job
for no money, or for very little money. In fact, you're stepping up your game to running for city council, which is this much more money. It's you make just under what a part-time Starbucks employee makes. So you got some hobbies.
I do. I when I had time, I did. Yeah. I still try to make time for them. Yeah.
Yeah. So softball, volleyball, bowling, going to the gym. When you can get there.
Yeah. This election's definitely gonna make me put on some weight. That is the one that is taking the hardest hit in terms of time. But we've had the same. No, that's not true. A softball team that has rotated a different cast of characters for the last 4 or 5 years. Co-ed team. Some years were outstanding, like this last summer, for example.
Yep.
Now, keep in mind, we do play in the lowest possible division. The skill level is not particularly high. But so we actually won
That's code for it's a beer drinking league.
We actually won our league this summer,
did.
but we had done that a couple years prior and then lost every game the following fall. So it's a blast. We have there is a core group of people that have been with us the whole time, I play volleyball over at Folsom Middle in a city league. Again, with this core group of people I've been playing with for close to 10 years now. And in that time, we've actually gotten a tiny bit better.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. At least it's not, not a full waste of time.
Right. No, that is actually, if I'm honest, that is my favorite activity there is, playing volleyball. I adore that. And then Wednesday nights, actually, is bowling league over at FLB.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
A brisk 33-week season.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of bowling.
That is a long time.
Yeah.
But great place. Have you played in the new bowling lanes now?
Oh no, yeah. It's this week is our first opportunity since they redid it all. In fact, we were supposed to start last week. They weren't quite done, so tonight's the night. After this, in fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Well, we're trying to get you out of here on time, but there's a little plug for Dan Dreyer and crew over at FLB. Great job over there.
Fabulous new lanes.
Spent a lot of money. Yes. Spent a lot of money on the new lanes, and it looks fabulous. So, and then the last one, PlayStation.
Yeah.
Play a little PlayStation with your kids?
Unfortunately, I was the one who told my kid about Fortnite.
Yeah.
I will take that regret to my grave, I'm sure.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I know. Many a kid is losing hours upon hours upon hours of productive homework time on Fortnite.
Well, I guess if there's a silver lining to it, it's a great thing to take away for misbehavior.
True.
But
very true.
It's this year in baseball, actually, I never thought I would have to yell at a kid in the outfield to stop doing Fortnite dances.
I didn't even know Fortnite dancing was a thing.
Don't even. Yeah.
No.
All
right.
That's a whole ball of wax.
Is it like the? Is it like what is it? The floss?
That was a big one. I think I'm past understanding what the cool dance on Fortnite is now, but yeah. But yeah, I do dabble in video games here and there. I always have since I was little, and the original Nintendo was around.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's kind of. Hey, we grew up with Pac-Man and all the video games, the arcades. They don't even have arcades anymore. But man, I used to burn through $20 in quarters just one after another in the arcades.
Now there is an arcade in Folsom.
There is.
Which everybody should check out that's interested in arcade games. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, on Sutter Street.
Yep.
It's like 815 or something like that.
It's
right in that area.
If you're walking west from Sutter Street Grill, it's in that little hallway.
Yep.
Down there. It's pretty cool.
It's all the way in the back, so it's kind of hard to find. But once you get there, you'll appreciate it because it's got all the old games that you used to play as a kid.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's some fun stuff to get to know about Mr. Chad for Folsom.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the things that you want to do if you're elected.
Okay.
To city council. We'll get to the serious stuff now.
Sure.
So you're running this campaign on the foundation of SKI. And it's an acronym.
Yes, it is an acronym.
And it stands for Safety, Kids, and Infrastructure.
Exactly. So
let's talk about safety.
Well, I actually just kind of give you an idea where that all came from. Because I've run for city council a couple times before.
Okay.
And I tried a couple different strategies, both of them obviously unsuccessful.
Yeah.
As I'm running for a third time.
Right.
So I really wanted to hone in on a message that was important to me.
Right.
And that I could relate to other people. And kids obviously is a big deal to me. Infrastructure we'll get to later, but safety. I started just noticing a real disturbing trend of speeding in Folsom. Mm-hmm. And then when I started paying attention to that, how much distracted driving was going on.
And running of stop signs, and people not using their blinkers. They're distracted, like you said. They're not paying attention to school zones. There's a whole lot of
in fact, we live in a school zone, and it's. I've actually sat out in my front lawn to watch people go by, and it's pretty scary sometimes how fast people will go in a residential neighborhood. And I know they're not doing it maliciously.
No.
But it's something that's we as a city haven't done a good job of communicating to people that you need to be conscious of these things all the time.
Curbing that behavior, whatever that.
Right, exactly. And how do you do that is the question. I talked at length last year to folks at the city and the traffic department, at the fire department, the police department, our former police chief Renaud, about what can we do about this? Are maybe speed bumps the answer? Those are not well loved by the fire department for emergency vehicle purposes.
Correct.
I tried to get a coalition of neighbors together and say, can we please just have this on before the traffic commission to have it considered? No. So that was, they kind of put that one off the table, and that is actually something I would like to pursue as a council member, is kind of get rid of this blanket policy where there's no good street where that's makes sense.
Right.
I think if we have a neighborhood and all the neighbors come together and they say, you know what, we understand the risks to delaying emergency response vehicles by a few seconds or minutes, but we want to have the speed bumps or tables or humps. There's a variety of different mechanisms for it.
Right.
Then I think, you know, maybe that should be something they have the power to do as neighbors who want to protect their community, their street that way. I always look at it like, yeah, perhaps it slows. Well, no, it does. I mean, it does slow emergency vehicles down, but you know, maybe we're preventing that accident that requires an emergency vehicle in the first place.
Sure.
So I just want to get away from this. There's no situation where it's a valid solution.
Got it.
You've seen the solar speed signs around town?
Yes.
Those, to my knowledge, the ones I am aware of are all privately owned, purchased by neighbors, and then the city makes an agreement with you to install them.
I had no idea. I just thought they were randomly placed around the city based on complaints from complaints from neighbors about speeding and whatnot.
Yeah, so you can actually go online and order one. They're a couple $1,000 of it. Not
I would
cheap.
imagine.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'd really like the city to start funding some more of those. I think it's a great visual reminder of, oh man, I am actually, again, I'm not doing this to be a jerk. I just kind of forgot I was in a neighborhood. I'm driving way too fast. Probably because I came off one of our main thoroughfares where everybody drives 70 miles an hour.
Right.
So it's easy to forget that when you get back into a residential neighborhood.
No, and it is good. It's a good reminder because if, you know, in California, the rule of thumb is kind of follow the flow of traffic so you don't hold anybody up.
Right.
Well, the reality is the fastest person in that, the person with the biggest lead foot is going to lead the pack in driving the speed limit.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have one of those signs, it reminds you of what the speed limit is on that road. Because a lot of times we forget because maybe we drive 50, 60 miles an hour on Blue Ravine.
Maybe.
I don't do that. I don't do that. And then having a nice little subtle reminder like that going, hey, speed limit is this, definitely helps you go, okay, that's right.
I mean, I know for me, ever since I started paying attention to it, and this is kind of, and I think a lot of people are like this, then I started realizing when I'm in neighborhoods, okay, it's time to slow down a little bit. Yeah. But if it's not on your mind, then you're not going to make that conscious decision. So if we can do some things to help put it back on your mind, I think that'll go a long way. Yeah. And you know, along with that, I think, and I talked a little bit about this the other night at the historic district candidates night. Mm-hmm. But I think we have plenty of laws on the books. I think it's a matter of enforcement. We've got to. I would love to get on the council and work with Folsom Police Department on creating a task force, whether it's a 3-month or a 6-month task force, to get out there and enforce those violations, the speeding violations. I'd like to create an ordinance that raises the fine for distracted driving. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's only subject to the $20 state fine on your first offense. Oh, really? But Tucson, Arizona actually just did a citywide ordinance to tack on an additional local fine for that, up to $140 for your first offense. It shouldn't be seen as a revenue thing. It should be seen as a deterrent. That's what it's designed to do. But if we do that, if we start really cracking down on distracted driving and speeding, then I think we can use some of those funds to start looking at maybe getting a couple extra police officers who are focused more on traffic patrolling, and hopefully keep the cycle of safety growing in that way. Sure.
So what other areas of safety? Obviously, you're talking about traffic safety and whatnot, and we'll talk about traffic a little bit later.
Well, there's a big one, and this was actually kind of a turning point for me personally, for a variety of political reasons. But back in February with the Parkland school shooting, right? I really started to evaluate, how different is Folsom than any of these cities. Right. And it really isn't. Right. It's usually a well-to-do suburb. and not dissimilar from Folsom at all. So I got the kids in the elementary school campuses, and there's no police presence on those campuses. And I also don't want to turn those elementary schools into fenced-in prison-like environments.
Right.
So what I would really love to be able to do is work with FPD on a program that has officers who patrol campuses, a small group, because you're not going to be able to do every campus. There's too many elementary schools.
Right.
It's practically impossible.
Right.
But patrol it on a completely randomized schedule. So there's always at least, you have the knowledge that there's a deterrent that could be there at any time. And I think that would be a great way to prevent, hopefully we never have to prevent anything.
Right.
But if something should occur, at least we have the opportunity to hopefully have an officer there that's trained to deal with that situation. The high schools have their resource officers. I want to see something along those lines, even if it's only an occasional part-time thing on the elementary school campuses. And similar to that, I'd like to get some work with Folsom Cordova Unified School District on a plan to expand surveillance, not in schools, but on the campuses, so that responding police and fire have better tactical and situational awareness, because they have more angles, more views.
Right.
On
so the perimeters,
campus.
seeing what's going on in the perimeter, and being able to know, is it one shooter or is it four or whatever? Yeah.
Yep.
So how much? I'm sure we're going to get this question. How much of this lands on the plate of FCUSD, and how much of it lands on Folsom?
Well, I've actually had the opportunity to talk to some folks at FCUSD, and from the way our conversations went, they were really excited about the opportunity to work together on these things. And I think we do. I think we both have the responsibility. The schools are in our town. Yeah, FCUSD works in 2 cities, but that's as much a part of the fabric of Folsom as anything else. So I think we could find as close to if you want to call it a 50-50 split. And I think if we can do some of these things in Folsom, where FCUSD also works in Rancho, if we can prove out a concept that this works, then they can adopt that in other cities, and hopefully, that expands throughout the region.
Sure.
So I definitely think it should be a straight up partnership between the two. I don't think one should be more responsible than the other, but it's going to take some leadership to get those wheels turning, and that's really a big reason why I want to get on the council, because I think that having that tight relationship with our educational institutions is so critical.
Got it. So that obviously ties into the safety, kids.
Some of the kids stuff crosses over a little bit. I do have some stuff specific to kids that's outside of the safety, which we could talk about.
Okay. Well, hey, we're hanging out, so let's put it all out on the table.
Let's do it.
All right.
So obviously, Folsom has had some bad news regarding bullying in the last few years.
Yes.
There's been some tough things that have happened. I'd really like to find ways, and I don't have an exact answer for this particular thing. This is just something, as a council member, I would like to work on behalf of our residents, is find a way to really crack down on bullying in a way that's not authoritarian, but in a way that encourages positive behavior instead. I think the middle school in particular is the toughest one.
Yes.
I see kids today in the elementary schools that just, the way they treat others with inclusiveness and acceptance, regardless of any differences, is just amazing to me, because it was not like that when I was a kid.
Right.
Not at all. My kids, I feel like, really don't see people's differences. And that makes me feel great. But I know when you hit that 6th grade, 7th grade time, as a young person, there's all kinds of things, hormonal things going on, and it gets tough. And I think that's where we need to address it. And I think one of the ways we do that is, I would like, if I get on the council, I'd like to have a special quarterly city council meeting expressly for middle school and high school students. Just them and just their issues.
Okay.
And I'd also like to create a commission that meets monthly, comprised of high school students, teachers, parents, and others interested in educating, just like any other commission. If you want to be on a commission, that is expressly devoted to the issues kids are facing, and they can bring their problems and their solutions to those problems to the council. I think we talked about that a little bit earlier, having some more of those front-facing groups to tackle the problems ahead of time. I think there's a lot of kids who want to be heard outside of social media channels, heard in a valuable way.
Right.
I think if we can provide them that platform and really understand what it is, or at least show them that we're trying to understand what it is that they're going through and what their challenges are, and hear them, give them a voice, I think that would go a long way to solving some of those bullying problems.
Almost kind of like having a junior city council
in a way.
meeting, you know, where it's instead of dealing with the things on the neighborhood and city level, you could actually have a junior city council that deals with the schools and the issues that are happening in the schools. It'd be a great introduction to government for
you could
kids.
do, and you know, I mean, sure, anybody can go to a council meeting and have their 3 minutes to be summarily disregarded after you're done.
Right.
If you've been to any council meetings.
Yes, I've been one or two. Yes.
So that's a big one for me. I also talked with some folks at FCUSD about how it is that this would definitely fall probably more on them, but again, someone to take an active leadership role in getting this started. I'd like to be that person, but getting more vocational education back into schools. I think that's going to be critically important to if you have any interest in the economy or the future of technology, I truly believe the job market is going to suss out to technology workers and folks that can fix things.
Right.
And in between is going to be a lot of automation and a lot of hardship trying to find a job in doing some of the traditional jobs we do today.
Right.
And I feel like we're so hell-bent on sending all of our kids to college when for a lot of them, they could be as successful, if not more so, learning a skilled trade. I wish I had that opportunity.
Yeah.
Because by the time I was in high school, we were pretty close to done with vocational education.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I learned some skills through some friends and their parents taught me a lot of stuff, but nothing formal. But I feel like I could have probably done something with a skilled trade. And college just isn't for everybody, and not everybody should feel like they should have to go to college to be successful.
Right.
And I think if we can get to kids as early as possible and say, hey, there's going to be viable career opportunities that pay really well. In fact, there was just a story in the Bee the other day about all these skilled labor positions that pay good money, like $60,000, $70,000 a year that they can't fill.
Right.
Nobody has the skills. So I really love to get back to that because I think it's going to be a fundamental part of the economy of the future is the skills, because everything in between skills and technology is going to be, I'm afraid, going to be automated away to a large degree.
Right. And if you look around this room, you can only see a part of it, but I mean the reality is there's these brewing tanks, you've got this freezer center here, you've got the furniture, you have all these things are built by somebody. This table that we're sitting on is built by somebody, you know, and just learning how to do the software is only one part of it. But actually manufacturing it is a whole other skill set that we've really kind of lost our way here in America.
Yeah, and when it breaks, that's another skill set coming in to fix it. I mean, I don't want to sound mean, but if you ask your friends around, like if they've done something to their house, how often do they say, oh yeah, we did that?
Right.
Oh, we had a contractor come in.
Yeah, they hired someone to come in and do it. Yeah.
Because, well, one, nobody has the time.
Right.
But yeah, it's just kind of in a disposable society right now where it's just easier to have rip and replace.
Yeah, just toss it away and buy something new. I found, you've probably seen this too, I saw some really cool stuff online. There's an organization that started up in some town, I can't remember, but I thought it was the coolest thing. They actually have fix-it centers where they have, you know, these guys that just, you know, they donate their times on the weekends and they go to this one location and people bring them stuff like vacuums or hair dryers, lawnmowers, digital devices, radios, whatever. I mean, they bring these things in and they actually spend the time to fix them rather than have you just throw it away into a electronics, you know, waste dump and let it rot away.
Yeah.
So.
And there used to be, I don't know if they're still around, but it was 4 or 5 years ago, but they started it down in San Jose. But it was a maker center, they would call it.
Okay.
And they would, similar to that, you would they would open in a warehouse in town, and you'd come pay $50 or whatever, and there would be skilled craftsmen that would show you actually how to build something out of sheet metal, use a water cutter.
Oh, nice.
Really cool stuff like
Yeah.
that. I mean, it's not a formal education, but that would be a great way to show people, hey, this stuff is cool, and also you can make a pretty good living at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. How much of that, again, looking at city government as opposed to school, how much of this falls on the school district, and how much can we actually impact with our city council?
Well, that's going to be. I don't have a solid answer for you on that. My sense is on that vocational part that that's going to fall more heavily on FCUSD.
Yeah.
But I think we need somebody to stand up and say, hey, this is what is important for the future of our kids.
Yeah.
How can we as a city help you make that a reality? And that's what I want to do as a council member.
Got it. All right. Well, let's talk about infrastructure.
Sure. That's one of my favorite things, and
yeah,
a lot of people hate that word because it sounds so boring.
Right. Right. But it is. I mean, it's the roads, it's the pipes, it's the sewage. It's how our city works. When the stuff that you don't see.
So when I was at the magazine I was talking about earlier, I actually, for a couple of years, towards the end of my tenure there, ran a spin-off magazine called Future Structure.
Okay.
So what that was our attempt to look at what we called the system of systems. All those things you mentioned: water, waste, energy, transportation, human beings, human capital, we call it. How do those 5 systems integrate into a larger system that creates a city?
Right. And
how do you take those systems and make them generate data that city leadership or county leadership or regional leadership can use that data then and make more intelligent decisions about building their cities going forward? The idea was, how do you build a smart city? By connecting all those different pieces together. So it was a terrific magazine. We put out a great product. Fortunately, we did not have the sales staff to sell that particular kind of magazine, so it didn't have a long life. But I did spend 2 years of my career there just exclusively talking about infrastructure, whether that was sensors on waterways to predict flow rates, driverless cars. I actually was fortunate enough to see a DARPA event, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, this was 11 years ago down in Victorville, California, do the original test, one of the original tests of the driverless car technology. It was amazing then, but it was super rudimentary. How far it's come in just a decade is amazing. Yeah. And what that's going to offer us is this it's called intelligent transportation systems. And that's when the transportation infrastructure has enough AI or has enough computing power to actually communicate with other traffic signals, can communicate with other traffic signals. The driverless cars can communicate with the traffic signals. So all the things know where all the other things are and can optimize traffic flow. And that's something we really need to invest in, because we're not getting the investment in the physical infrastructure we need to handle the growing capacity that's going to be Folsom's population. Right. We're not getting a bunch of wider roads, which ultimately don't work anyway, for reasons I can go into later, but they induce demand. So people that wouldn't use the road when it wasn't wider will now use it.
Correct.
So like Hazel it'll be as busy as it was before in not too long. So you can try and do that physical infrastructure, and it's important. You still have to do it, but it's not going to solve the problem. You need your systems to act more intelligently. And as Folsom adds 22,000 at minimum new cars, and we're trying to supplement that by having developers just help fund some overcrossings. It's just not going to cut it. So we're going to have to find ways to invest in smarter technology solutions to help better manage traffic. And the city is doing some of that now, but we're going to have to get serious about it, because we're already talking about, and the general plan has already approved, this idea of lowering the levels of service at our intersections.
Right.
And I will give a shout out to Roger Gaylord, Councilman Gaylord, for trying to fight that and successfully at least coming to a compromise to to limit the reduction in the levels of service, because basically what they do is they grade them A, B, C, D, E, F. The lower down there, the longer the wait time at an intersection you're allowed to have. And when you start adding tens of thousands of new cars, it makes it more difficult to get people where they need to go efficiently. And so rather than, I think, this is my opinion, rather than invest in what's needed on the physical and technology infrastructure side, the city would rather try and reduce the level of service requirements. It's easier and it's cheaper. It makes but it makes the city worse. It makes the quality of life worse. And that's something I think we ought to try to avoid. And kind of underpinning all of that is this idea I've been talking about for the last few months, is a municipal broadband network. For those who don't know, if you think of water pipes or electricity, instead of water and electricity, the city lays the pipes to have data come through. You treat the internet like a public utility. So there's lots of cities around the country that have done it. Chattanooga, Tennessee is probably the most famous one. Fort Collins and Boulder, Colorado just approved this year municipal broadband networks. And the idea is that it creates way better connectivity, which is great for job creation, company retention, and attracting people to live here. It's a lot cheaper for the city to run its own network, because for most of us, we have Comcast or AT&T.
Sure.
In our old house, we only had Comcast. We had no other choice. So they could charge us whatever they want, and there was no incentive for them to modernize that infrastructure because they had no competition.
Right.
If we can get rid of them, which they will not go away without a fight, certainly.
Of course.
If you look at cities that have done it, it's a tooth and nail, drag out, knockdown fight. But it can be done. It's been done in over 170 cities across the United States. Some complete build out, some partial. But what I think it does is it frees up Folsom, once that's in place, to really be aggressive about adopting that 21st century technology that we need for things like traffic management, to compensate for the growth that's going to happen. Regardless of what anybody thinks about South 50 now, it's happening.
Right.
People are going to move there, and we're going to have to find a way to deal with it. And I think that broadband infrastructure underpinning will help us get there, and by building out the infrastructure on the ground, on the surface level, that will help us get that data I talked about earlier to make better decisions on how to manage our city.
Well, it's the Internet of Things, right?
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
everything at some point is going to utilize data it gathers from the internet. So everything is going to connect to the internet, to some server somewhere, to be able to gather and utilize data that's been collected so that it can run more efficiently. I mean, look at Google Home. You know, all these appliances now that are connected to the internet. These refrigerators are now connected to the internet, so you know when you run out of milk. Yeah. And it'll automatically make you a list to go get milk. So. So it just makes sense that it
does. Well, to me it does, and some people might argue, well, why spend? Because it's going to cost a lot of money. It will, and we'll have to get creative about how we generate the funds for that. But I think at this point in civilization, I mean, this is going to sound really like grandiose, but I think internet access is a fundamental need for everything you do.
Especially for Folsom TV, we need it.
Yeah, it would not work very well.
we couldn't do the Station 39. We couldn't go live and cover that event because there was no internet over there. We had zero signal, and the internet that the station had wasn't very good as well. So yeah, we could use a little broadband around Folsom to help us bring the good stuff that's happening in Folsom to you guys.
Well, sure, and I think it's a mindset. Do you think of it as a privilege that you are fortunate enough to be able to pay for, or is it like electricity? Is it like gas? Is it like water? Where it's just it's a part of your life. It's a utility that you need, and I think it is. I think the way society has developed, that you have to have it. Right. Regardless of what you do, it's just part of the way we live now. And I think when you have the city itself operate its own network, then you have like what they did in Chattanooga. They created their own board of directors from city folks to oversee and manage and handle customers. They basically created a municipal company, not unlike SMUD. Right. So instead of would be the Folsom Municipal Internet District, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's SMUD compared to PG&E, whereas,
exactly.
Whereas if you live in El Dorado Hills, you're not very happy with your electric bills.
Right,
but if you live in Sacramento County, you're very happy.
Yeah.
Or happy-ish.
And you have very little choice when you live in El Dorado Hills.
Yes.
You can put on solar, and that's your choice.
That's your choice, yeah. Very true. So since we kind of went there, let's talk a little bit about south of 50.
Okay.
So obviously you touched on Roger Gaylord's fight to try to limit or you know.
Prevent the level of service reduction as much as possible.
Yeah.
And at least find something that the majority of the council would agree to.
Yeah. Okay. So what? Obviously, we've got traffic, we've got water. You touched on traffic a little bit. Let's talk about water.
So I think water's a tricky one because we only have the one source. Mm-hmm. So we have to be smarter about how we get our water. And I think that what frustrated so many people about South of 50 was the water thing.
Yeah.
Because people remember Measure W and that the requirement that any new development there would be required to find its own independent water source.
Sure.
So I think in the spirit of that measure, people thought of things like a groundwater or some other actual physical water source. When instead what happened was the city cut a deal with the developers to fix broken pipes in the city that up until then they were content to leave broken, and use that savings of those broken pipes as the new water source. And that, I think, kind of set off this snowball effect of people starting to look at south of 50 like, this isn't really what we were expecting when we approved Measure W. We kind of feel like we got sold a bill of goods. Not everybody feels that way, but I know a lot of people do. But the reality is the project's happening now.
Sure.
So we have to face up to that. The time to stop it is done. But all those things that are going to get built still need to go through various approval processes, various commissions. And I think that's where we have an opportunity to say things like, or not say things, require things from developers like, if you're going to build neighborhoods here, put gray water recycling in that neighborhood.
Sure.
You can do that now. You can do a small gray water miniature facility. You can even do it at the home by home level. So basically you take your shower water or your dishwasher water and you recycle it on site into reusable water. Sure. You can go further down that road and still get quality drinking water. Doesn't have a good PR campaign behind it.
Right.
Toilet to tap, they call it.
Right. That just doesn't sound
No,
right.
it does not. They need a better name.
Yeah.
But there's things you can do to minimize the impact, because the reality is all of our water is still coming from Folsom Lake. So we need to be smarter about how we do it. You could do things like, and I don't want to sound like I'm advocating my business now, but things like artificial grass.
Right.
Or xeriscaping.
Sure.
Which
I know a lot of people have done in recent years to just because when the drought hit, a lot of people they stopped watering, and what happens when you stop watering is your grass dies.
Yeah.
And then when that restriction gets lifted, now you're left with dead grass. And
well, and the other that's right. And the other thing that's interesting, and I think or at least I would like to address as a council member, is a lot of people moved to Folsom back in the day because they could buy bigger lots.
Correct.
So it doesn't make sense to me that those folks on large lots have the same restrictions when water restrictions are eventually put into place, which they will be again, and we're already seeing. It's got to be proportional. If you buy a house, which is fine, if you buy one, you don't want a big yard. Then you have a smaller allotment, because the majority, more than 50% of household water usage is for outdoor irrigation.
Okay.
So you take that into consideration if we can work with Folsom Water District and with San Juan Water and say, hey, maybe we can find a way to be a little more equitable based on the reasons people came to Folsom in the first place, instead of doing, in most cases, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, that just a blanket policy tends to not be the best policy.
Right.
If you can be a little bit more thoughtful about things and how you administrate things, I think that goes a long way with people. So I think doing things like that is the best way forward with water, because we do have a finite source, and I mean, ultimately, the goal would be more water storage in California, but that is not something I can, as
No,
a local
that's-
council
yeah.
member.
Right.
I don't think I have the power to build a dam.
No, I don't think you do. If you do, I'd be pretty impressed. But yeah, no, the reality is that's federal and state level of getting that. Unless you want to work your way up the ranks and go to and run for, Congress or
Right.
Senate.
No, I'm happy to be here in Folsom because I really want to. I want to spend 2 terms.
Yeah.
2 terms working on these things. Because the South of 50, it's going to fundamentally change Folsom. I think probably in most people's opinion, mine included, probably for the worse in terms of deterioration of what it means to be from Folsom, what that character of the city is.
Yeah.
It's part of growth, and it's in some ways inevitable, but if we can do our best to forestall that as long as possible or minimize that loss of character, I think we have to, because we all live here for a reason, and that's why I want to get on the council ultimately, is because I want to represent people like me.
Right.
People like you that live here because you love it, not because some group endorsed me and said, we want you to do this and this and this. It's just old school politics, running to represent the people, the original ideal.
Right. So let's talk about your style of leadership and what people can expect if you get into city council. I know you just kind of touched on that, but what can I expect as a resident, voter, constituent? If I've got an issue and I want to talk to you, what is your approach to problem solving?
Well, that's a good question, because everybody treats that a little bit differently, I think. For me, I've always been in communication. That's been my career, whether it's writing or marketing or even doing video stuff like this. Finding ways to communicate with people on a level that they're comfortable with. Kind of like how I talked about the kids' special city council things.
Right.
Everybody in Folsom has their own preferred way. Some people like to do things anonymously. Some people like to do things on social media. Some people want to just call their representative, say, hey, this is a problem. Some people want to come to meet you for coffee.
Right.
I think that's my style, is that I'm adaptable.
Yeah.
And I love to be able to be open and available for anybody that wants to talk to me. That, I think, is what you lose when you are on the council too long.
Yeah.
And not for ill-conceived reasons, but for, you just kind of, I hear it when I hear longtime council people talking to residents, kind of, not all of them, but sometimes the way they say things to people is like, I've heard this before.
Yeah.
You know what our position on it is. If you don't like it, you can leave.
You can walk out the door.
I've basically heard those words spoken to a resident from a council person. So I think that's why it's important to bring in occasionally new leadership, new faces, people that are still invigorated with that passion of serving the residents of the city, rather than groups that you ultimately, when you are there forever, you inevitably get beholden to. It's just the nature of the democratic beast. So I would, I think, finding ways that people are comfortable communicating, making yourself available, and being there when they want something, or they want to talk to you. Not this, I'll get back to you on this.
Right.
Actually, and it's hard. That's the problem with it. That approach is hard, and it's time consuming, and it's draining. But that's I think the noblest ideal of what representative government's supposed to be.
Right. All right. So we've got just a few minutes left. So what else would you like people to know about Chad for Folsom?
Well, there's a couple of, since we have a couple minutes, there's a couple other things I want to touch on. I've had this idea for a couple of years now. The last 2 times I brought this up. And it kind of gets back to the transportation issue. We have existing rail that runs almost to Old Town, all the way to basically Costco.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous nature area.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I would love to be able to someday get, because there's a resurgence going on in this streetcar idea. If we could find a private operator run a streetcar, not only would that be great for tourism, I think it would help older folks get around to where they need, because that track runs, like I said, from Old Town. It goes right by several shopping centers. It goes by Mercy Hospital. It goes by Folsom Lake College. I think it'll help people that have mobility challenges get where they need to go. I think it would help students at Folsom Lake College get where they need to go. It would pay respects to our railroad history. And like I said, I think it would be a great tourism draw. But the important thing we didn't touch on was homelessness.
Right.
And I know that's a big concern for everybody in Folsom, myself included. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. Fortunately, like everybody else in the country, I have not come up with the ultimate solution yet.
Right.
But I do think we as a city have a responsibility to help those who want help. I think it's important to make that distinction. I extremely admire the work groups like Heart, Folsom does, Powerhouse Ministries, Twin Lakes Food Bank. They do amazing work. But there's definitely folks who are trying to get out of homelessness and folks who are not. And I think we need to be extremely compassionate with the ones who want help. I think we need to be really tough on the ones who don't.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is the city open a small, safe place that's not in neighborhoods, that's set off a little bit, where people, if they need to camp somewhere, can camp.
Yeah.
So they're not behind the Little League field at Rodeo Park, or they're not on the bike trails, but where they can go that's safe, where it's supervised, where they can get some laundry services, and they can get a shower.
Right.
And it's temporary, it's limited.
And restrooms.
Yeah, exactly. So we can help those who want help to get back on their feet. And again, I'm going to sound like I want a commission on everything, but I do think it would be really valuable for the city to have a commission on homelessness. And that commission's job would be, well, it would be comprised of residents that are concerned about it, of volunteer organizations, of religious organizations. But folks on that commission, their job would be to really study what's happening across the country in other cities, particularly on the West Coast, because that's where the big problem is. It's all over the country, but the West Coast in particular, because of the housing prices, is really seeing a lot of homelessness. And try and see what other cities are doing, what's working and what's not. And that's kind of going back to what I did as a writer. Look at government across the country, what's working, what's not, and how can we learn from those successes, and how can we learn from those failures, and how can we adopt that for Folsom.
Yeah. Great. Anything else?
No, I think that covers it.
Fantastic. Chad?
Thank you, sir.
Great having a conversation with you and meeting like this. I got to learn a lot more about you that I never knew before. So I think this was really good to get to know Chad, the person, not just the candidate. So,
well, thank you, Adam. And I do want to say I am going to have a fundraiser event, campaign event on Sunday afternoon on September 30th. I'll have more details about that later, but it'll be centered around the football game. It should be a fun thing to do. And then I also told Eric I would let everybody know that Red Bus is doing an Oktoberfest this weekend. It should be a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Awesome. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chad. I hope you enjoyed this segment of conversation and or cocktails and conversation with a candidate for city council. And I hope you tune into the next one that we'll have coming up very soon. And get out there and vote come November. We want you to be informed. We want you to vote with knowledge and understanding of who the city council members, the potential candidates are. So once again, thanks for tuning in to Folsom TV, everyone. I hope you have a great night, and we will see you very soon.